KJP, Karina Jean-Pierre, the White House spokeswoman, she's having a banner week, another one.
Watch what she's wearing, too.
She's asked, that's
well,
very
she
catty.
looked like Al
very
Capone.
Catty.
Like she dove into his closet and got some gangster suit from the 30s. Did you see that? She must look like the Joker. She had a pinstripe gray suit with shoulder pads in it and then a purple blouse underneath.
Very fetching. At least that's what her wife tells me. Anyway.
Suzanne Melvo, I know her wife.
The question was about the Afghan national who was allowed into this country and...
planning that Election Day bomb?
Yes. Yeah. Planning an Election Day attack, ostensibly in connection with ISIS. That's what we understand from the indictment. Also, apparently a CIA contractor. Inspires a lot of confidence about vetting not just people who come into this country, but people who work for the federal government and perhaps in sensitive positions. It's unclear. KJP was asked about that because some people might find that troubling. Not her, but some people.
What they need on the ground.
Thanks, Doreen. Following up on Jackie's question from earlier on the Afghan terror suspect, NBC is reporting that he was a security guard for the CIA before he came to the U.S. and that he passed 2 rounds of vetting. Does the administration believe there was adequate vetting?
So what I can say is I can't comment on this directly because it is an active investigation, as you know, that the Department of Justice is currently moving forward with, so I'm going to be really careful. What I can say is every Afghan national who entered the U.S. was screened and vetted by intelligence, law enforcement, counterterrorism professionals, and with every new information that emerges, if that individual could pose a threat to public safety, we take immediate action, and we take that action. And so I'm going to be not going to speak to this particular case, but I can speak more broadly, and that's the actions that we normally take. That's how we move forward. And the president has always been clear, protecting the American people will always be his top priority.
Exactly. That's how they do it. Yeah. And that's how we do it.
Close the binder. I'm leaving. Have a good weekend.
It's all vetted.
It's all.
That's how we do it. So it's all vetted. We put the safety of Americans first. And if, for example, a CIA contractor turns out to be a terrorist plotter, that's how we do it. I can't comment on that specifically. I can just tell you that we're doing the work. Okay. It's interesting, both that development, that case, as well as the response, because we have another border town in Middle America to talk about. Oh, yeah. Logansport, Indiana, which is about 2.5 hours southeast of Chicago. They have seen about a 1,500% increase in Haitian migrants in the schools over the last 3 years, and it's becoming a bit of a problem. Imagine. Fox affiliate reporting.
Logansport, Indiana, a rural city 78 miles north of Indianapolis, known for its diverse urban population of 18,000. People from at least 28 countries now call Logansport home, with at least 27 languages spoken.
Each week.
Each week. Okay, you did not say that.
Yeah, each week. So last week they had, my final count that I knew of, they had 16 newcomers.
That week.
And a lot of them are coming unaccompanied.
A startling report from the Cass County Health Department administrator during a September county commissioner meeting. Serenity Alter sits in meetings with new children enrolled in Logansport schools. She listens to them describe their journey to the city.
Most of them fly from Haiti to Nicaragua to Mexico and then to whatever state they're flying to. A lot of them, like we met a couple last week that hadn't seen their parents in about 7 years. It's a eye-opener.
The overall growth of school enrollment jumped by nearly 150 kids in 3 years. This year, there are 207 Haitian students in Logansport schools, up from 14 in 2021. They also have new students from 11 other countries, including Guatemala, Cuba, Honduras, and El Salvador. No one from the health department wanted to do an on-camera interview with us, but they told me the language barrier is a big challenge.
I don't think our school system can contain that many and can sustain what they're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. So again, why is this happening in these smaller communities in the Midwest generally? Not limited, but generally. We know that there's an Alabama community too, Faith Hope, Alabama, was it? That's under potential threat of the same thing happening there. Mike Needham from the American Compass was part of a panel discussion at the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics. That's the Axelrod Institute of Political Skullduggery that's housed at the University of Chicago. Anyway, it was in part a forum on these sorts of developments, including in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, as we've talked about quite a bit. Listen to what Needham has to say. We've touched on this, but he really focuses upon it as a significant part of the explanation of what you see happening in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, and Springfield, Ohio, and Whitewater, Wisconsin, and Loganstown, Indiana.
We were in Charleroi, Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago, which is a small town of 4,000 people. They have had 2,500 Haitian migrants dropped on that town in the last 2 years. How did they get there and why are they there? There is a company in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, it's a food packaging company, that could invest in productivity. When you look at the videos of what's going on in this factory, these are people sitting in a refrigerated room moving dishes from one conveyor belt onto another. The type of thing that could be mechanized, that could have robots, that would create high-paying jobs for American workers, making the robots, servicing the robots, monitoring the robots inside the factory. The factory owner doesn't want to do that. Instead, he goes to a service agency, staffing agency, which owns the 50 houses in town, stuffed 15 people into these two-bedroom households who came from NGOs that worked with the Biden-Harris administration coming in. And so when you look at the way our asylum laws in this country are being abused to allow companies to rely on low-wage migrants instead of investing in American workers, when you look at the way H-2A, H-2B visas are, we have a mass problem in this country. So what's going on in Charleroi is that the company is paying $16 an hour to a staffing agency that then pays the legal immigrants $12 an hour to do this. That's what's going on.
But somebody's going to take that job, right? Is my point. Somebody's going to have to work that job.
But the lack of investment in productivity, the reason that we're not adopting robotics, the reason that we aren't doing the types of things that businesses have to do to create high-wage jobs in America for people who are here legally to do, is a result of bringing in low-wage labor. Whether that low-wage labor comes in illegally or legally doesn't change the equation of whether or not businesses face an incentive to invest in high-wage work.
One more piece before we get to our friend Scott McKay. Because Kamala had a little candidate forum at Univision.
Nice pronunciation.
And she was asked about migrants, generally speaking, and she's not quite as iconoclastic on open borders as she used to be, but the underlying position that she's communicating hasn't changed.
So my pledge to you is that by the grace of God and hopefully with your support as well, when I am elected president, I will bring back that border security bill and I will sign it into law and do the work of focusing on what we must do to have an orderly and humane pathway to earn citizenship. And one of the biggest problems with failure to have a comprehensive plan for immigration is that we have not given them the pathway to earn their right to citizenship. And that is, again, that is one of the priorities for me, frankly, in terms of my motivation for what I know we must do. Oh my God. And I think it's, I think it should compel us to agree they should not have to live in fear, but should have an ability to be on a pathway to earn their citizenship. So it is one of my priorities.
Yeah, you've said it 4 times. We're convinced. So here's the thing. It's a real stark choice. Mass deportation or mass normalization. Mass deportation or mass normalization. And if you had any doubt that this bipartisan immigration, blah, blah, blah legislation they prattle on about ceaselessly, if you had any doubt that it's a fraud, the one hand, she says, that's the first thing I'm going to do is resuscitate it and get it passed in Congress and sign it. And the next thing I'm going to do is mass normalization of people in this country legally, pathway to citizenship. So obviously, the legislation has nothing to do with preventing her mass normalization vision from coming to fruition, not in her mind. I mean, the two things if you were interested in border security, the two things would be mutually exclusive. They're not. It tells you how ineffectual that legislation was.
You know what I heard? Do the work to focus on the work we must do.
Yeah, well, that's powerful, powerful words. I have that inscribed on my pet rock, actually, ironically enough. Scott McKay is the publisher of the Hayride, senior editor at the American Spectator, author of Racism, Revenge, and Ruin, as well as King of the Jungle. Scott, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. Let me start real quick. You're saying mass normalization, and you are correct in that. But when you hear Kamala Harris talking about path to citizenship, what you should be thinking is path to registration as a Democrat voter.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
but
I
they
agree.
kept telling
That
us,
is what
Scott,
this is all about.
I know, but they kept telling if they're not here legally, they can't vote. They've been banging that drum for the past 9 months, and it was all a lie because that's exactly what they're doing, signing up people to vote. People, if you go to get a driver's license, you automatically are registered to vote.
Yeah. Well, the thing of it is, it's harder to do the sort of surreptitious getting illegals to vote, particularly in states that they don't control. But once you make these people citizens, even in red states that you're trying to turn purple or blue, there's no way to stop it. And so everything that she is about, and of course, when you talk about Kamala Harris, you have to kind of talk about the corporate Kamala Harris, because all she is sort of a front person for this collection of handlers, which is not very different than the collection of handlers that have been running Joe Biden for the last, 4 years. The goal is give all these people citizenship now that they're in the country and turn this into a one-party state like California, which is exactly what Elon Musk said in that interview he did with Tucker Carlson earlier this week. And he's just echoing something that pretty much everybody has been saying on the right. And, of course, that's been demonized as a conspiracy theory. But you can't do that anymore. It's obvious that this is what's going on. It's cheap labor for companies that are willing to play ball with the Democrats, and it's widespread, alteration of the demographics and the electorate in this country. That's all it is.
So I want to go back to Logansport, Indiana, and other communities that everybody has been talking about for the last several weeks as these stories have bubbled up to the surface. And this idea, essentially, that was communicated by Mike Needham from American Compass, that what you have in a lot of these smaller towns, you have basically like a Brad Wesley from Roadhouse, played brilliantly by Ben Gazzara, you'll remember. You've got a guy or a couple of guys who own the town. They're the big shots in town. And they want cheap labor. And whether it's to replace more expensive American labor or it's to prevent having to make deep investments in productivity that Mike Needham was talking about, they're the sponsors of they're the ones sponsoring and effectively, like the administration has done, inviting mass migration to these small towns, overwhelming these towns. And so you have, we talk sort of globally about Chamber of Commerce and corporate America, but in these small towns, you have this interesting dynamic at play in places like Charleroi, it would appear.
Yeah, no, I love the Brad Wesley reference. That's perfect. I actually saw that over the weekend, last weekend. I was flipping channels and the old Roadhouse came on. And you're right. I mean, in lots and lots, particularly not very successful small towns, there's a family, right, who has been exploiting the folks for, they own the mill, or maybe they don't own the mill. Maybe the guy's a trial lawyer and he's got billboards all over the place, but there's always somebody who's like the power behind the throne in that town and has been sort of abusing the citizenry. And it's one reason why, companies that would move into the next town rather than that one. And in a place like a Charleroi or, some of these other operations, you're going to get that. And, they talk about Trump as a threat to democracy, but this is the threat to democracy. Because essentially what you're doing is you're bringing in serfs. and the Democrats want to make these people, voters, and they're going to be under the thumb of somebody.
Yeah.
And so, that, in other words, that town will never be able to develop and join it, because all of the people that would do the things that would make that town better are going to sell their stuff and get the hell out.
Right, which is
So you're going to have these horrible places all over the country that they've destroyed.
They're going to get erased. That's right. By the way, just on that sort of genre of film, I would also recommend for you, for your viewing enjoyment, more recently, Red Right Hand with Andy McDowell and Orlando Bloom.
Red Right Hand.
Yeah, Andy McDowell plays the heavy. She plays the Brad Wesley character effectively. This is it's not a remake of Roadhouse, but it's of that sort. Just as a quick aside. Yeah, Red Right Hand. Yeah, check it out. So this was interesting. I was having this conversation yesterday with a buddy of mine, and the idea that a lot of these and conservative and for border security, Trump supported the whole thing. But it's like, this could turn out to backfire on Democrats, boomerang on them, because so many of the people they've let in have come here for a better life. They want to work. And so as you get, second and third generation here, not that he's promoting mass normalization or anything, but just saying the boomerang possibility. As they become assimilated and they have kids and so forth, and they pursue working for a better life, they're going to become Republicans. And so we have this potential to upend the Democrat strategy. What do you say to that?
Well, I think there's probably an element to that. I'm not going to sit here and demonize all of the people that have made it here. If I lived in Bolivia or Nicaragua or Cuba, I'd want to come to America too. But here's what I will say. I don't think you can apply the give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses narrative to somebody who was happy to strap on a backpack full of fentanyl and cross the border.
Right.
To come, let's not make these people out to be the heroes of this situation. So there's that. But what I will say is, people who are willing to come here to work, I think, there's a possibility that we're kind of missing the mark. I mean, Venezuelans are, well, the ones that hadn't been emptied out of the jails, but Venezuelans who are coming here, generally speaking, are here to avoid socialism. So there may be some potential there. But, and this is the thing, is they ask, well, how do you assimilate this many people when they come into the country? And the answer is they're already assimilating them. I'll tell you what they're assimilating them into. And not in the case of the Charleroi story where they're bringing these people in to go work at a food processing plant. But the ones that are just coming across the border, all right, and they get the EBT card right away. Yeah. The assimilation that's being done is welfare culture in America.
Yeah.
Not, the old Horatio Alger story of, immigrant made good. It's, we're going to give you government housing. We're going to give you food stamps. We're going to give you Medicaid. We're going to give you all these different, Democrat government programs. And before you even learn English, you're going to learn the welfare mentality in this country.
Well, and just to put a fine point on.
The problem with that,
just to put a fine.
Dan, the problem with that is, is we already know that the welfare culture is intergenerational. Yeah. We've seen it with Americans who've been put on the dole.
Yep.
And, the kids and the grandkids, I mean, all of the behavioral pathologies and everything, that stuff transcends generations, and it gets harder and harder as time goes by for people to get off of that mentality. So, this is purposeful. This is being done for a reason. And I actually feel a little bit better about the people in a Charleroi because they're serfs. I mean, they're not being brought in on an arm's length transaction to do work, but at least they're here to work. Whereas you get all these people that are coming here just to get on the dole, that's the core of what the Democrats are trying to do with this mass invasion of migrants.
Yeah, well,
So,
I mean, to your point, I mean, just to give you an example of what you're talking about, Massachusetts over the last 14 months has added almost 700,000 food stamp recipients to its welfare rolls. That's equal to 10% of the Massachusetts population. And you're right. What do we know? We know that being a ward of the state transcends race and everything else. The welfare state destroys families indiscriminately, regardless of race. And so the 700,000, 10% of the Massachusetts population put on the welfare rolls in the last 14 months. It's Cloward Piven global, right? I mean, it's just globalizing the Cloward Piven strategy.
No, that's exactly what it is. And I mean, this stuff has been around in the fever swamps of the socialist left for decades. And they finally basically, decided they had the stones to go and do it. And so this is what's happening. And look, most people get this. There's a reason why when they start polling mass deportation, it's pulling 55, 60% of the respondents. It's because people understand that the system can't withstand this, that the culture can't withstand this many people who, are not assimilated into America. And they understand that, the negative effects locally in all of these places where you do dump all these people, are going to be bad. Chicago is a perfect example. You mentioned Fairhope, Alabama. Fairhope is a beach community on the Gulf.
Yeah.
It's a fairly higher end place, really nice place to go visit. The fact that they're dumping all these people in Fairhope is really amazing. You would think somebody would have enough stroke to call up and say, no, we don't want that here. But they're doing it in Fairhope anyway. It's almost kind of like it's a red state Martha's Vineyard type of deal, right? And, it's Joe Biden instead of Ron DeSantis inflicting that on them.
Scott McKay, publisher of the Hayride, senior editor at the American Spectator, and author of Racism, Revenge, and Ruin, as well as King of the Jungle. Scott, thanks as always.
Hey, thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
We'll talk to Jason Sneed at 7:37. He's the executive director of the Honest Elections Project. Talk about an aspirational group name. 7:37.
And she's coming out. The First Lady of Chicago will explain. But now let's head into the newsroom. Here's Mike Scott.
Skies are mostly clear as we start the morning. 56 degrees at 7:32 on AM 560. The Answer, and we're following developments